Welcome to another episode of The Brand Called You, a podcast and podcast show that brings you leadership lessons, knowledge, experience, and wisdom from thousands of successful individuals from around the world. I'm your host, Ashutosh Garg, and today I'm delighted and privileged to welcome a very good friend, a very senior and successful professional, and a fellow member of the YPO from New York, USA, Mr. Bassel Hamwi. Bassel, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Ashutosh, and it's great to be connected with you and your listeners.
Thank you. Bassel is the CEO of HamwiConsult. He has over 3 decades of global experience in private equity and banking and has led iconic organizations. And as I mentioned, he's a fellow member of the YPO. So, Bassel, looking back over more than 3 decades across banking, private equity, and development finance, what moments clearly shaped you for being the leader as you are today?
Good question. I mean, when you have gray hairs like you and I think you realize that although you've had success, you really learn from your failure.
Correct.
And this is definitely the case with me. I've had probably more crises that I would care to admit, but I would say these were the pivotal points in learning. And it's not the external work, it's the inner work that I to do. And if you want like a couple jump like straight at me. So I helped start the stock market, which is kind of a unique opportunity because, it doesn't happen often. We don't start a lot of stocks in the world.
Absolutely.
And I got to see it kind of like become completely ineffective through civil. Also, I've experienced a bank run as a bank CEO. Also is not something that a lot of people I know have gone through.
Correct.
And it's during these times that I look at all the decisions that I made. Not all of them were right. And how does that shape me as a leader?
Fascinating. And you have moved between global institutions like the World Bank and highly entrepreneurial environments. How did some of these transitions challenge your assumptions about leadership and impact?
Oh, tremendously so. I mean, the World Bank, when I joined back in 1990, was like really an incredible organization. I joined IFC, and there was a Wall Street Journal article the month that I joined talking about the World Bank's hot potato and how incredible this small organization called IFC is doing all of these challenging things in emerging markets. And actually, the term emerging market was coined on my floor at IFC. So
Wow.
this is how far back I go.
Mm-hmm.
And I learned so much from there. And I initially, when I was that age, I really thought that it's all about competence.
Mm-hmm.
I thought like, if I'm really competent at doing something,
Yeah.
that's going to give me fulfillment and success.
Very
As I
interesting.
realize it's not about that, right? It's about how to make sense of the world. Where do I get my confidence from? What are the things that kind of shape me that are a lot more important? But the IFC and the World Bank were incredible learning grounds for discipline, for logical thinking, for, large vision. I mean, all of that was great. It wasn't a place for entrepreneurship,
Yeah.
right? We could sit in the boardroom and talk about entrepreneurship until we're blue in the face. But as doing it, as taking risks, it was very hard to step out of the World Bank and say, I'm sacrificing a salary and a retirement, and I'm just going to go out to the world and see what happened. Right? So definitely it took a lot of guts to do this.
Fascinating. Fascinating. Was there a defining failure or a setback early in your career that later on became a turning point for a growth as a CEO and a board leader?
I mean, you're talking about just one failure. I've had so many.
Oh,
I'm
that I
trying.
agree. I could write a book on my failures, but yes.
I mean, I failed on so many levels. The things that I wobbled on, and I don't think there was a specific failure that I can point to and say, wow, this is like cataclysmic at that age.
Yeah.
But I wobbled a lot on where do I get my strength from. So I thought that if I built the most incredible Excel model And if I'm able to sit with the head of the company or the minister of finance at the age of 25, I got it, right? I must absolutely be effective. And the reality is really not. The reality is you got to work, on yourself. I had to figure
Correct.
out what makes me tick. I got to figure out what makes me happy, and I had to figure out who's really important on my team. And that goes back to looking at the role of family in all of this, right? I'm heavily, heavily influenced by my parents. I'm influenced by my brother and sister. I'm influenced by my wife, and my kids, and having, their say so and their well-being and their vision is
Absolutely.
so important for me to do my business work, right? It goes
Correct.
beyond just the family.
Correct. Correct. In your experience, and you and I have both been YPOs, or are YPOs, and we've met many, many, many CEOs. I'd love to get your perspective on what is the most common blind spot that prevents CEOs from reaching their full potential.
I mean, I now a big chunk of what I do and the chunk that gives me so much joy
Hmm.
is coaching CEOs. I find this, it's, how, when you find something that is beyond a career, it's a calling.
Hmm.
This is kind of what I'm responding to at this stage of my life.
Hmm.
And I'm really amazed that probably all of the CEOs I coach have this thing in common, which is they want to become better.
Hmm.
This is like, the belief that, yes, I have agency. Yes, I can do better.
Hmm.
Whether it's regarding selling my company or whether it's regarding how do I show up as a member of society or a
Hmm.
husband, father.
Hmm.
This drive is absolutely incredible.
Hmm.
And the blind spot that I find that many of us have
Hmm.
is this idea that it may not altogether be possible.
Hmm. Hmm. You also do a
The
lot
truth,
of work with family enterprises, Basil. What
yeah,
are the most underestimated risks that threaten continuity across generations?
yeah. Oh my God. I mean, I've worked with family businesses that have stretched, over 100 years, and some that are really, really young.
Hmm.
I think like the most, and for me, because I'm in a family business, but it's not that big and it's not multi-generational.
Hmm.
I find like the most incredible challenge is that we don't separate the conversation from the dining room to the conversation into the boardroom.
Hmm.
These are completely different things.
Absolutely.
How we relate to one another as family members, how we are able to interact,
Hmm.
whether we're joking or whether we're fighting or whether we are talking about inheritance, and all of this is
Hmm.
so different what's needed when we step into the boardroom.
Hmm.
And I don't know any family member that has mastered this,
Hmm. Hmm.
Even those that are over 100 years old,
Yeah.
like they still combine the two and their decisions become kind of tainted by one or the other.
Amazing. Amazing. How should founders balance emotional legacy with professional governance as their business grows?
Yeah. I've tried to answer these questions for people I work with in different ways.
Hmm.
Uh, I really think that you have to reach a certain cruising altitude before you really introduce strong governance.
Hmm.
So if I'm a founder and there is a pizza principle, there's eight of us, and we're working very hard out of the garage trying
Hmm.
to get the company off the ground.
Hmm.
The type of governance that we need to have is really very individual, to lead by example, to make sure that we are all respecting kind of the rules of the road that we agree to.
Hmm.
When you get to a certain size, all of that changes. And you have to figure out what that size is,
Hmm.
right? So it could be revenues of 20 million. It could be, whatever it is. It could be a complexity of working across borders. It could be a number of things.
Hmm.
But once you get to a certain size, you have to say, listen, it's not about how I lead.
Hmm.
It's about how we are governed.
Hmm.
And then you introduce different tools and widgets in order to make sure that the company continues.
Hmm.
And this is, committees can come into play. Working with people who have done this before really works. Coaching works. Mentoring, which I think is a fabulous instrument,
Yeah.
works really well in these
Mm,
instances.
mm. There's an old Chinese saying, and I'm sure you've heard this, that the first generation grows, the second generation consolidates, and the third generation destroys. I want to get your view that what distinguishes family businesses that thrive across generations from those that stagnate or fracture?
Yeah, yeah. I think there are many aspects to this.
Mm,
I would say probably the common denominator is that they're able to separate the
mm,
family relationship and the business relationship. These are
mm,
two very different buckets, and they're able to distinguish between them
mm,
and figure out what is the governance structure for other generations. I mean, that you're definitely in the business, and you've written 10 books. A lot of this is about
mm,
how we
mm,
make how business works and how we govern ourselves.
mm,
But the problem comes up when we reach the cousins confederacy, right? I mean, when we are working as siblings in the company, there might be some issues. Usually they're
mm,
not that major.
mm.
When it comes to the third generation, and we're talking about cousins who, have feelings for one another, but
Yeah,
they are not so interdependent. When you think of a
correct.
sibling, this is the longest relationship we will have in our lives on earth.
Absolutely. Mm,
That's such a key one. For cousins, not so much. So you have to figure out kind of how do you navigate this for the third generation. And this is where governance comes into play. And this is when you have to say, listen, we are in the boardroom, and these are the conversations we have in the boardroom. And this
mm,
is where people like you and others come in and say, listen, we are able to help you through
mm,
bring independent board membership relationships and other things that
mm,
ensure that you continue in the boardroom. And
mm.
you got to be believable, you got to be real, right? It's not about introducing something out of space. This is doing something that makes sense for the family,
Correct.
that
Correct.
feels right.
Very interesting. Basil, you have transformed and scaled institutions in very complex environments. And I remember many, many stories I've heard from you in our journey as YPOers. What must leaders unlearn when moving from stability to high growth phases?
I think for me, the biggest thing that I had to unlearn, and honestly, it still is something I'm trying to unlearn,
Mm,
is and the ego, if
correct.
you and you read, I know you read psychology. The ego is like very difficult to define because
Mm,
everybody defines it kind of differently as to what this thing is. But this idea of how much do I matter in the organization,
mm,
and how much do I matter in the work that I do?
mm,
And I think we fall into that hole quite often
mm,
when we put ourselves in a position where, yeah, this is my work, I'm proud of it, and it matters, and therefore it should continue.
mm.
The reality of the matter that it's never really about us.
Correct.
We even think of, you know, how many people it takes just to manufacture a pencil, right?
Mm,
And it's, how do we matter? There is
yeah,
nothing at all that we can do by ourselves. So
correct.
it's really all about figuring out what's important, who's important on the team, and how do you work together to get it
Mm,
done.
amazing. My next question is, what role does disciplined capital allocation play in long term value creation, especially in family owned firms?
Huge.
Hmm,
I think it's absolutely huge.
hmm,
Uh, a lot of family businesses kind of think, you know what, we will figure it out as we go. We have
hmm,
our resources, we have our estates, and we have, the cash flow, and we kind of figure it out as we move along.
hmm,
But the reality of the matter is, without disciplined capital, I think we're dead in the water. You got
hmm,
to have really very clear and set rules around this.
hmm,
Uh,
hmm.
and and so much work has been done,
Correct.
devoted globally. I mean, INSEAD has done some work, IMD has done some work, alma mater, HBS has done a lot
Yeah.
of work on that.
Hmm,
But having capital that is absolutely disciplined in a
hmm,
in a growth situation really helps you when you have the bumps. So without it, I think it's very difficult to grow a family
hmm,
business beyond
hmm,
information.
hmm. And having served on boards as a CEO, having served on boards and as a CEO, what do most boards get wrong about supporting executive leadership?
Yeah, I don't think boards. I mean, I've served on many, I think like 20 or more so far. I don't think boards always challenge the CEO in the
Mm,
right way.
mm,
Often than not, I discover that boards are giving the CEO a very specific mandate, and you got to accomplish this.
mm,
And that I think that kind of creates a complete schism in the relationship,
mm.
right? Because if you ask me, and I've been on both sides of the aisle, as you said,
Yeah.
if you as a board mandate to me that this has to be my top line
Mm,
next year,
mm.
I'm probably going to do it.
Yeah.
But I'm going to bring in risks. I'll tell you what the risks are, and I'm going to bring in risks that are probably not comfortable neither for me nor for you.
Mm,
And in the long run, we might end up paying for it.
mm,
I think alignment of incentives is key. So making sure that the CEOs have a significant stake in the business,
mm,
that business success, the long-term business success,
mm,
translates to their own success,
mm,
and ensure that we hear them first. So we may have different ideas in the CEO, and we often do. But I would say instead of like saying this is what we want, it's like give me what you think makes
mm,
sense, and let's
mm,
figure out that we have a way to get there.
mm, mm. Great
And
response. Great
empowering
response.
CEO
Yeah.
is critical for the long-term sustainability of the business.
Mm, mm. Absolutely. What governance practices become non-negotiable once a
Yeah,
business reaches a certain scale?
yeah. So for me, there are two that are absolutely non-negotiable.
Mm,
The independence of the ARC, the Audit and Risk Committee.
yeah.
I mean, I'm a big fan of combining audit and risk in the same place. So I know
Mm,
not a lot of people not. But I think the independence of the ARC is absolutely critical and
mhm.
important, especially for entrepreneurial businesses as they grow. And a remuneration
Yeah.
committee, right? I mean, how we look at how people are incentivized and
Mm,
making sure that it has to make sense
yeah.
for company as well as for its leaders, and
Mm,
being transparent as to what that is.
mm,
These two coming from an independent place, I think gives everyone comfort that the
mm,
company is in the right direction.
mm,
So these are my two non-negotiables. There are
mm.
other things,
Yeah.
obviously,
Yeah.
but I think these two
These two
governance
would be
structures are really
important.
fail safes for any company.
Great pointers. Thank you. Moving on, Basil, drawing from your global experience, how should today's CEOs prepare for the increasing geopolitical and economic uncertainty all over the world?
As if we can prepare. Oh my God, you and I are talking during a month
Yes,
where the Venezuela events have happened, where we
correct,
have
correct.
Iran in a terrible shape, and yeah. So I think for anything, we need to make sure that we build up our resilience,
Correct.
right? I think this is the key.
Mm,
And the way I define this is like if bad things happen,
mm,
how inconvenient will it be for me, and how much would it stop me from being happy and being able to do what I want to do?
mm,
I think that's kind of the bottom line for me
mm.
because the world is going to happen. It's outside. It's going to continue to happen,
Yeah.
and it has to be okay.
Mm,
For So, how do we come up and deal with this? I
mm,
think is key, and this is when we have to have a great, consistent vision of the world in which we live, right? So, formulating this vision, what are my rights and responsibilities?
yeah.
What is my circle of control and circle of influence? And where beyond the circle there is nothing that I can do, right?
Mm,
And how do I grow my resilience so I can deal with these
mm,
things? Having said that, a lot of people have done work on transacting cross borders, on reducing global risk,
yeah.
on changing your tax structure
Mm,
across global. I mean, so there's all sorts of intellectual things that have to be done.
mm,
But at the same time, I have to take a close and hard look at myself and say,
yeah.
well, if my country, Syria, collapses, which it has, can I overcome this? What would
Mm,
it take to survive something like
correct.
that? I
Correct.
think
Great response. Thank you. Uh, What capabilities will future CEOs need that were less critical a generation ago and more so now with AI and other all kinds of technology?
Oh, this is so I really don't know.
Hmm.
I think AI is really in its infancy, and the humanity is also in its infancy.
Correct.
We're really not that far along.
Hmm.
But I would say that rather than trying to figure out what are the hard skills that we need,
Hmm. Hmm.
it kind of like the idea, do we need to code or do we need to understand one another?
Correct.
I would say we
Correct.
need to understand.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And it's a distinction that is, very scientific in my mind.
Hmm.
This is the difference between complex and complicated,
Hmm.
right? So the example that's often given, if you want to do a moonshot, you want to fly a spaceship to the moon. Okay,
Hmm.
that's really complex.
Correct.
But are able to bring it down into phases and you understand all of the science behind it and all of the math behind it, it's doable and it's
Hmm.
repeat. You can do it over and over and over again
Yeah.
because you figured out the code.
Hmm.
This is not true for us people.
Hmm.
Humans are complicated. There
Correct.
isn't an algorithm that I would say, oh wow, if I
Hmm.
crack, I'll be able to understand humanity.
Hmm.
There isn't.
Hmm.
So therefore, I think what's needed is to really figure out how do we understand one another.
Hmm. Hmm.
Because in the age of AI is not going to understand us. I think they'll be able to figure out how we might act in certain ways, but truly, truly gain an understanding of humanity. This
Hmm.
is a, person to person, a
Correct.
group to, and that's, I
Correct.
think, where I would focus.
Absolutely. Well said. Basil, I have time for two more questions. When you
Sure.
advise leaders, how do you balance short-term performance pressures
Yeah.
with long-term institutional health?
Right. Yeah. So, I mean, there is something called performance coaching,
Yeah.
right? And I am a big fan. I think
Hmm.
performance is great.
Hmm.
However, this is not my wheelhouse. That's not what I do.
Hmm.
Uh, I am really much more concerned with the long-term aspect of how we are progressing
Yeah.
as leaders and how we are impacting our communities and
Hmm.
companies.
Hmm.
So my real concern is on my deathbed, when I look back at my life,
Hmm.
am I going to say, wow, this was a great ride. I feel like I did well. Or am I going to say, oh, you know what? I
Hmm.
messed up there.
Right.
And really long term.
Hmm.
Right? Therefore, I take a completely holistic developmental approach to coaching leaders and to coaching myself.
Hmm.
I might have a coach. I've had a coach almost all of my professional life.
Hmm.
And definitely, I focus on the long-term view.
Hmm.
The short-term stuff is really important.
Correct.
I mean, I'm a big fan of performance coaching,
Hmm.
but it's the long-term view that ensures that we get where we want for
Hmm.
our benefit of our companies as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah. Well said. And my last question for you, Basil.
Right.
If you could leave CEOs and family business leaders with one enduring principle for leadership and legacy, what would it
Yeah.
be?
Wow. One enduring principle. I would say it's not about us.
Hmm.
It really isn't. And the more that we're able to come to terms with this, the better our performance will be and the
Hmm.
better impact will be on those around us.
Hmm.
It really is not about it.
Well said. And on that note, and this very powerful set of words, it's not about us, Basil. What an amazing conversation this has been with you, catching up with you after many, many years again. It was almost like sitting and talking so many years ago in different places that we used to travel to. Thank you for talking to me about your own journey. Thank you for giving us some incredible pointers on some of your life lessons as a leader, as someone who has supported so many leaders, and as someone who has drawn incredible wisdom over the years of your work. Thank you again for speaking to me, and good luck.
Thank you, Artush, and thank you to your listeners. I look forward to hosting you, whether here in New York, Dubai, or India at some point. Would
Look
love to see
forward.
you again.
Look forward. Thank you. Thank you for listening to the Brand Called You videocast and podcast. platform that brings you knowledge, experience, and wisdom of hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. Do visit our website www.tbcy.in to watch and listen to the stories of many more individuals. You can also follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Just search for the brand called You.